The first breath of morning over Nubia was not a song, but a silence, vast, golden, and eternal. It rolled across the dunes like an invisible tide, brushing over the temple columns and pyramid tips of Meru, gilding the statues of gods who had forgotten the sound of mortal prayer. The sun rose slowly, indifferent to kings or slaves, but its fire was the same that once crowned the first pharaohs of the Nile. Beneath its light, you stand alone upon a terrace of red sandstone, the air thick with the scent of myrrh and burning palm oil. Your robe, woven from white linen, clings damply to your back, and the golden collar at your throat feels heavier than your crown. You are Pharaoh of Cush, son of Amun, lord of Napata. But at this hour, before the courtiers awaken and the petitions begin, you are merely a man haunted by his inheritance. Below you, the city stirs, camel bells ring faintly. Market women lay out baskets of salt and dates. Soldiers polish their shields until they gleam like miniature suns. The Nile glistens in the distance, a ribbon of silver running through the red earth, carrying life and memory in equal measure. You think of Egypt, that ancient rival and mirror, whose scribes once mocked the black kings of the south, yet whose dynasties were carved from Nubian blood. Centuries ago, your ancestors rode north, conquering Thebes and Memphis. And for a generation, the Black Pharaohs ruled the world's oldest empire. Their statues still stand there, their faces broad and proud, though the desert winds have eaten away their names. You feel their eyes upon you even now, not with pride, but expectation. The priests say you were chosen by the gods, that your Ka, your divine essence, is the continuation of theirs. But as you gaze at the horizon, where the sand shimmers like molten glass, you wonder if the gods have grown weary of kings. The council waits for you within the palace, their voices already whispering behind carved doors. They will speak of war and taxes, of treaties with Egypt and trade routes through the Red Sea, of caravans laden with ivory, incense, and slaves. They will speak as though power is eternal, but you know it is sand in the hand, beautiful, fleeting, impossible to hold. You think of the artisans chiseling reliefs into the temple walls, of the farmers bent double beneath the sun, of the blacksmiths hammering bronze for spears that may never be used. All of them live and die beneath your shadow, but none of them will remember your name. That is the curse of kingship, the illusion of immortality. The wind rises suddenly, carrying with it the dry heat of the desert and the faint scent of acacia. Somewhere beyond the dunes, lions still roam, their roars rolling across the savannah like thunder. You remember your father's voice, deep and stern, telling you that a pharaoh must be both lion and god. Yet even gods grow old. The horizon brightens, and for a brief moment, the sun rests directly above the pyramid of your ancestors. The stone glows like fire, and your reflection dances in the gold inlay of the terrace floor. You bow your head, not to the gods, but to the weight of time. This is your kingdom, beneath a sun that blesses and burns in the same breath. You are the Nubian Pharaoh, black as the earth, fierce as the river, a man whose life is carved from sand, destined to glitter for a moment before the desert takes him back. The throne room of Meru is not built for comfort. It is built to remind, every pillar carved with gods who once walked beside men, every wall painted with the crimson victories of ancestors long dust, a theater of divinity. and dread. When you enter, the chamber hushes as if the air itself holds its breath. The scent of cedar and frankincense coils in the air, and shafts of light cut through the lattice windows, falling across golden statues that gleam like molten suns. The courtiers bow, their faces hidden behind elaborate veils, their voices soft as papyrus rustling in the wind. At the far end, the throne of Nubia waits heavy, ancient, and merciless. It is carved from ebony and inlaid with ivory tusks, its arms shaped into lions whose eyes once held real rubies. When you sit, the throne groans softly beneath your weight, as if even the wood remembers the burden of kings. On the floor before you, priests chant in low voices, invoking Amun and Isis to bless your reign, but their words sound tired, worn smooth by centuries of repetition. The vizier approaches, his robe embroidered with gold thread, his eyes cautious and calculating. He carries a scroll, another plea for tribute from the north. Egypt's envoys grow bolder by the day, demanding gold, demanding grain, demanding a loyalty that tastes like chains. Once, your armies marched through their cities. Now, your messengers ride to their gates, bearing gifts. You sign the parchment with your seal, the wax warm beneath your fingers. And for a moment, you feel the tremor of history, the quiet humiliation of survival. The merchants who kneel next bring offerings, tusks of ivory from the southern forests, blocks of incense from Punt, and ingots of Nubian gold, so pure they seem to glow. You nod absently as they speak of profits and trade routes, but your mind wanders to the borders, to where your soldiers guard the desert passes under a merciless sun. You have heard rumors of rebellion, whispers that your own blood, a cousin, a general, stirs the tribes of the West with promises of freedom. Freedom from what, you wonder, when even kings are prisoners of their crowns. The musicians begin to play harps and flutes, weaving melodies older than memory. Their rhythm rises and falls like the Nile in flood season, swelling with beauty and sadness. You close your eyes and see your mother's face, proud and sorrowful, the day you first wore the crown. The gods will test you, she said, not with war, but with peace. You did not understand then, but you do now. Peace is a slower death. It erodes from within, dissolving the iron of your will grain by grain, until all that remains is the hollow echo of duty. As the music fades, a shaft of sunlight strikes the throne, illuminating your hands, black, strong, and trembling. You stare at them as if they belong to someone else. These are the hands that command armies, that bless crops, that condemn traitors to death. Yet they cannot grasp what is slipping away, the faith of your people, the fire of your lineage, the certainty that the gods still listen. The court applauds the music softly, a polite ripple of sound that vanishes as quickly as it comes. You rise, the gold of your collar catching the light, and the courtiers bow as one. Outside, the afternoon burns white. The sound of drums carries faintly from the training grounds, where boys barely grown rehearse for wars they will never fight. You think of your ancestors, black pharaohs, who conquered the world, and of yourself, a ruler surrounded by wealth, yet haunted by emptiness. The throne behind you looms like a tomb. Ivory and blood, one gleams, one stains, but both remind you that power, like beauty, demands a price. You turn toward the window, and for a fleeting moment, You imagine walking out into the desert, barefoot, nameless, free, but the guards' close ranks behind you. The gods have not yet dismissed their servant. The valley hums with the rhythm of chisels and hammers, a slow heartbeat echoing through the sandstone cliffs of Meru. The air is thick with dust and devotion, each grain glowing gold in the afternoon sun. You stand above the workers, your shadow long against the rock, watching as they carve your future home, your tomb, into the earth. There is no fear in their movements, only patience. Their songs drift up from the pit like prayers half forgotten, verses passed down from fathers to sons, promising rest to kings who never truly slept. The foreman, an old man whose skin is the color of polished mahogany, kneels before you with a mixture of reverence and fatigue. He places his calloused hand on the ground and swears an oath that no intruder shall disturb your eternal rest, that no thief will defile your chamber, that the gods themselves will guard your sleep. You nod, though you both know the promise is a fragile one. Nothing built by human hands escapes the hunger of time. The carvings already shimmer in the sun, falcons, lotus blossoms, and hieroglyphs etched with painstaking precision, each line a prayer for immortality. The workers' children bring water in clay jars, their laughter echoing faintly through the dust, and for a moment you envy them. Their world is small, their dreams unburdened by destiny. You, on the other hand, are a prisoner of memory, of the bloodline that demands your perfection, of the gods who never forgive weakness. A breeze stirs the air, carrying the scent of stone and sweat, and with it the ghostly murmur of your ancestors. Their voices weave through the wind like smoke. Do not falter. Do not forget. Rule as we ruled. You close your eyes and feel the heat of the sun settle on your brow like a crown of fire. You remember the stories your mother told you as a child of the first kings who spoke directly to Ammon, who commanded the Nile to flood and the rains to fall. You wonder if they too felt this quiet dread, the knowledge that greatness is a mask for loneliness. As the day wanes, the workers light torches, their flames flickering against the newly carved walls. Shadows of men and gods dance together, indistinguishable in the firelight. You walk among them, your sandals crunching on gravel, and pause to touch the cool stone of the entrance. Inside, it smells of raw earth, ancient, patient, waiting. The priests will later fill it with amulets, statues, and jars of oil. But for now, it is only a hollow promise. You trace the hieroglyphs that spell your throne name, the one meant to endure forever. The curves are elegant, but you can already feel the fragility beneath their beauty. Someday, the wind will erode them. Someday, the sun will bleach them away. Yet still, you build, because that is what kings do, not for glory, but for the illusion of it. The foreman approaches again, his voice hoarse from the dust. He asks if you are pleased. You look at the half-finished tomb, at the men bent over their tools, and you tell him it is good. He smiles, not with pride, but with understanding. Both of you know it is not the truth that matters, but the ritual. The torches sway as the night deepens, and the stars emerge like 1,000 tiny scars across the sky. You turn to leave, but your gaze lingers on the valley below. The tomb builders continue their work in silence, and for a brief moment you feel a strange peace. Someday they too will lie beneath the sand, their bones mingling with yours, their songs forgotten. But tonight under the weight of stars and dust. They build eternity, one strike of the chisel at a time. The night breathes softly over the Nile, its voice a slow whisper through reeds that have heard 1,000 generations come and go. The river is old, older than your crown, older than your gods, and tonight it feels older still. Its dark surface shimmers faintly beneath the moon, reflecting the weary glow of the palace torches far behind you. You walk barefoot along the embankment, where the mud is cool and the air smells of wet clay and crushed lotus. Each step leaves a print that the water hungrily erases, as if the river itself refuses to remember your passage. The priests call the Nile the blood of Osiris, sacred, eternal, merciful, but you see only its patience, its quiet indifference. You stop to watch a fisherman pulling in his nets, his small fire flickering on the prow of his boat. He bows when he sees you, not out of reverence but habit, the way one greets the wind or the rain. His eyes are hollow, his frame lean, and for a moment you envy him. He knows nothing of treaties, of prophecies, of thrones that crumble under the weight of history. He lives in the rhythm of the current, ruled by the river alone. You toss a gold ring into the water, an offering, perhaps, or an apology. The ring vanishes with a soft ripple, swallowed without ceremony. The Nile keeps no treasures. It gives and takes with the same slow grace. In the distance, frogs croak among the reeds, and the stars seem to tremble in the haze above the desert. The night air carries the faint hum of insects and the far-off murmur of temple prayers. You remember being a child, lying beside this same river, tracing constellations with your mother's hand guiding yours. She told you the Nile remembers everything, every king's rise, every famine, every song ever sung upon its banks, and you believe her still. Yet the river's memory is not kind. It records but does not mourn. You kneel by the edge, cupping the water in your hands. It is warm, thick with silt, tasting faintly of earth and iron. You drink, not out of thirst, but ritual, a communion with the past. For a brief moment, you feel the pulse of something vast moving through you, the same current that carried the boats of the Black Pharaohs northward to conquer Egypt, the same tide that bore their mummified bodies home again to sleep beneath the sand. The moon drifts higher, silver and silent, painting the water with a ghostly sheen. You look across the river to where the ruins of old temples rise like broken teeth from the earth. The hieroglyphs there are fading, the gods they praise long forgotten. You imagine them whispering to one another in the dark, lamenting their own extinction. The thought comforts you. Even divinity can decay. Even eternity can grow tired. A cold wind stirs, rattling the reeds like bones, and you pull your cloak tighter around your shoulders. Somewhere behind you, a palace gong sounds a signal of dawn approaching. Soon, the city will wake. The markets will fill with the noise of traders, and your courtiers will once again call you divine. But here, by the river, under the moon's pale eye, you are only a man watching history drift by. The Nile sighs a long, low sound, like breath escaping the lungs of time itself. You stand, brushing mud from your hands, and stare into the current. It moves endlessly forward, carrying secrets no one will ever know. You whisper a single word to it, not a prayer, not a command, just a name, and the river swallows it without a trace. Somewhere out there, beneath the silver skin of water, your name joins 1,000 others. Kings, slaves, lovers, priests, all equal in the deep. The current flows on, patient as eternity, and the night closes over you like a dream. The palace is a shadow before sunrise, its halls echoing with the sighs of sleeping servants and the faint rustle of curtains swaying in the desert breeze. You wake before the light, as kings often do, because dreams have become heavy things full of sand and memory. The air is cool for now, scented faintly with lotus and ash from the night's braziers. Somewhere far off, a dove coos. It sounds small and tired, as if even the birds grow weary of the endless dawns. You rise slowly, the linen of your robe whispering against your skin, and step toward the balcony where the horizon is already bruising with light. The world is quiet, that rare hour before duty reawakens, before priests begin their chants, before your advisors start their murmured schemes. The desert stretches out before you like a sleeping animal, dunes rising and falling in soft breaths. For a brief moment, you could almost believe the land is at peace, but peace, you've learned, is only the pause between storms. You lean on the stone railing and feel the chill seep into your palms. The first fingers of sunlight creep across the sands, touching the tips of distant pyramids until they gleam like fading stars. A servant approaches, bowing low, offering a basin of water. The reflection that stares back at you from its surface is not a god's, just a man's, older than he should be, eyes dulled by the weight of too many mornings. The crown rests nearby on a low table, its gold dim in the pale light. You could leave it there, you think. Walk away, barefoot, into the dunes, vanish like so many nameless men before you. But the thought fades as quickly as it comes. The world beyond these walls would not remember you, and maybe that is the cruelest truth of all. A soft knock interrupts your thoughts. The messenger enters, his face drawn, his scroll sealed in red wax. He kneels, waiting for your command to speak. You know the script before it's read. Famine in the south, unrest near the border, a caravan raided by desperate men. It is always the same story, written on new parchment. You dismiss him with a nod, and as he leaves, the chamber fills again with silence. You turn back toward the dawn. The light is harsher now, the warmth pressing against your skin like a slow accusation. You can hear the city awakening, the creak of wooden carts, the cry of merchants setting up their stalls, the chant of priests rising from temple courtyards. Life, relentless and indifferent, continues its march. You stand there a long time, until the sun lifts fully over the horizon, blinding and magnificent. From here, it seems eternal, but you know better. The sun too will fall, swallowed each evening by the western sands. Everything falls. The throne, the temples, the gods, the kings, all of it returning to dust. You close your eyes and breathe deeply, the heat already building. The crown gleams beside you, waiting, patient as destiny. You pick it up, its weight familiar and cold, and set it upon your head. The gold presses against your brow like the memory of a wound. Somewhere below, the people begin to chant your name, their voices rising with the light. It should fill you with pride, but instead, it feels like an echo in an empty hall. You whisper to the sun as it ascends, a quiet plea, or perhaps a confession that you will bear the day once more. Because that is what kings do. They rise, they rule, they endure, even when their hearts have long since turned to stone. And so begins another day beneath the endless Nubian sky, where glory fades and history yawns itself awake. There was no music when they crowned you, only the whisper of sand sliding down the walls of the temple and the steady beating of your own heart echoing somewhere between the pillars. The coronation of a Nubian pharaoh was meant to be an act of thunder, drums, and conch shells, golden offerings lifted to the sky, but in truth, it was quiet, almost shy, as though the gods themselves had grown weary of such ceremonies. You remember the way the morning light entered through the high stone windows, falling in pale streaks across the floor like tired blessings. The priests moved slowly, their shaven heads gleaming, their robes heavy with gold thread that shimmered with each step. The scent of frankincense filled the air, cloying and ancient, and every breath tasted like dust. When they lifted the crown, a circle of gold inlaid with turquoise and lapis, you felt the weight before it touched your head. It was not the gold you feared, but the silence that followed, a silence thick enough to smother thought. The old priest's voice trembled as he spoke the sacred words, naming you son of Ammon, ruler of the two lands, keeper of the Nile's breath. But his eyes were distant, and you wondered whether he believed the words anymore. Around you, the courtiers knelt, their faces hidden, their loyalty rehearsed. The drums that should have thundered in triumph beat softly, like hearts uncertain of their rhythm. A falcon circled above the temple roof, its shadow sliding across the painted walls. A good omen, the priests said. Yet all you felt was the chill of stone beneath your bare feet, and the strange awareness that you were no longer entirely yourself. The boy who once raced along the riverbanks was gone. In his place stood a figure carved by duty and fear. The crown sat awkwardly upon your head, pressing into your skull as if testing your resolve. You tried to meet the eyes of the gods carved into the pillars, Amen, Isis, Horus, but their stone faces offered no comfort. They had watched too many kings rise and fall, too many promises turned to dust. When the final chant faded and the priests withdrew, leaving you alone in the hollow grandeur of the hall, the weight of it settled into your bones. Outside, the city waited traders with their bright fabrics, soldiers in bronze, children craning to glimpse their new ruler. You walked through the crowd in silence, their cheers distant, dreamlike. Someone threw petals. Another lifted a clay idol for your blessing. Yet in your chest there was only stillness, a calm too deep to be joy. You looked up, and the sun was already high, glaring down like an unblinking god. You thought of your father's crown buried with him in the valley, now coated with centuries of dust, and wondered whether yours would one day lie beside it, forgotten, unremarkable, just another relic in the sand. That night, when the feasting began and the torches painted the palace in trembling gold, you slipped away to the balcony. The desert stretched before you, endless and empty. You removed the crown, feeling the sweat on your brow cool in the night air. Below, the people still sang your name, their voices faint, carried by the wind, until they became nothing more than whispers. You looked at the crown in your hands, beautiful, ancient, meaningless, and for the first time, you understood why the gods do not speak. They, too, are tired. You placed it beside you, and watched the stars drift like ash across the sky. And in that quiet hour, beneath eternity itself, you felt the truth settle in your chest like a sigh. A king is not born. He is buried alive beneath the weight of time. The first months of your reign glimmered like false dawn. Every corridor of the palace was lined with gold leaf, every ceremony drenched in perfume and praise. And yet the scent of decay already clung to the edges of it all. The scribes wrote your name in fresh ink, black and perfect. But you could feel the hesitation in their strokes, as though they sensed that even ink grows brittle when the years lean too heavily upon it. You spent your mornings in the audience hall, listening to endless petitions about taxes and trade, each voice rising and falling like waves that carried nothing but exhaustion. Merchants bowed low before you, their arms heavy with gifts, rings shaped like cobras, bracelets cut from ivory, cups carved from amber. You smiled as custom demanded, though inside a strange emptiness bloomed. The treasury was full, yet the fields along the river were fading, their soil tired from too many harvests. The priests assured you the Nile would rise again, that Ammon still favored his chosen son, but you saw the worry in their eyes when they thought you weren't watching. At dusk, when the palace cooled and the torches were lit, you would wander the storerooms where tribute was kept, mountains of gold dust, jars of cinnamon, bolts of linen, so fine they shimmered like water. You would touch them, let the gold slip through your fingers, and wonder how something so bright could feel so cold. They said gold was the flesh of the gods, but to you it had begun to smell faintly of death, of sweat, of distance. One evening, a delegation from the north arrived, their leader cloaked in white linen, edged with Egyptian blue. He spoke honeyed words of friendship, his voice slick with diplomacy, but behind his smiles you heard the clatter of chains. Egypt wanted your gold, your soldiers, your silence. You agreed to their terms, because the alternative was war, and war is never fought in sunlight, only in shadows that linger long after the swords have dulled. When the envoy left, your vizier praised your wisdom. The priests sang hymns to your prudence. Yet that night, as you lay awake, listening to the desert wind scrape softly against the walls, you realized you had traded something more precious than gold, the illusion that you ruled by choice. The next morning, you visited the workshops where the smiths melted ore into ingots, their furnaces roaring like captive beasts. The light was harsh, and the heat wrapped itself around you until breathing felt like swallowing fire. The men bowed, their bodies slick with sweat, their eyes red from smoke. One held out a new ingot for you to bless, a rectangle of molten light, the color of the sun. You placed your hand upon it, felt its warmth seep into your palm, and whispered a prayer that was not for prosperity, but for peace. When you lifted your hand, the skin was dusted with gold, and for a fleeting instant, it looked beautiful, divine, almost. But as the light shifted, you saw that the shimmer clung like a stain that would not wash away. That evening, as the horizon burned red and the air thickened with silence, you sat alone in the courtyard. The sunset turned the walls the color of old bronze, and everything seemed to melt into the same weary hue. A servant approached to light the torches, but you waved him away. The darkness felt kinder. The gold on your hand still caught the last scraps of light, glimmering faintly like a quiet accusation. You realized then that gold was not a treasure, but a promise made by those long dead, a promise that glory is worth the cost of sleep, of peace, of self. You turned your hand over, watching the glitter fade into shadow, and whispered to no one, all crowns are made of dust. The desert has a sound, though most men never hear it. It is not the howl of wind or the shifting of sand, but something older, a deep humming silence that lives beneath the earth. You rode out into it at dawn, leaving behind the palace, the noise of petitions and incense, the golden suffocation of duty. The horizon stretched wide and empty, a sheet of pale fire beneath the rising sun. Your horses' hooves sank into the dunes, and the world around you was stripped bare. No walls, no guards, no gods, only the heartbeat of the land. The air shimmered, and the dunes moved like waves caught in eternal slow motion. Here, in the kingdom of dust, every step feels sacred. You came to the valley where your ancestors sleep, the necropolis of kings, where the pyramids rise like broken teeth from the sand. Their shadows stretch long across the ground, dark fingers pointing toward eternity. You dismounted and walked alone, the wind tugging at your cloak, the sand whispering against your feet. The tombs stood silent, their entrances sealed with centuries of sun. You ran your hand along the stone, tracing hieroglyphs carved by men long dead, prayers, names, promises of life after death. The letters were shallow now, eroded by time, and in their fading you saw the truth of your own reign. Every king believes he will be remembered. Every one becomes dust. Inside one of the pyramids, the air was cool and still, heavy with the scent of stone and forgotten offerings. You lit a torch and descended. The walls were painted with scenes of glory, battles won, gods appeased, cities rising in triumph. Yet the faces of the kings were all the same, eyes fixed upward, hands raised toward salvation that never came. You stood before one of their sarcophagi, the lid carved with the likeness of a man who could have been your twin. For a moment, you almost envied him. His wars were over. His people no longer called his name. He had achieved the one thing you had not. Rest. You knelt beside the stone and whispered to him, not as a ruler, but as a son of the same endless desert. Did you find peace? You asked, though the silence that followed was answer enough. Outside, the light had changed. The sky burned with the color of rust, and the dunes glowed like embers. You climbed back into the saddle and looked once more at the valley, the tombs half buried, the pyramids leaning against the horizon, the sands creeping higher each year. One day they will swallow it all, the stones, the names, the dreams, and when that happens, perhaps the desert will be free again. You turned toward the north, where the river glimmered faintly in the distance. The wind rose, carrying with it the soft hiss of moving sand, and for a brief instant it sounded like breathing, the slow exhalation of kings whose stories have finally run out. You closed your eyes and let the sound wash over you. The horse shifted beneath you, restless, sensing the oncoming dusk. You looked back one last time at the valley, now a blur of gold and shadow, and felt the faintest tremor in your chest, not fear, not sorrow, but a quiet acceptance. You were part of this place, as bound to it as the bones beneath the dunes. Someday, your tomb would join theirs, your name another mark for the wind to erase. And strangely, that thought did not terrify you. It felt like truth, old and simple. The desert did not belong to kings. Kings belonged to the desert. Night came softly, folding itself around the palace like a worn linen shroud. The torches hissed in the corridors, their smoke curling up to meet the carved ceilings where the gods still stared down, patient and unblinking. You walked barefoot through the hall of statues, your steps echoing against the polished stone, the air cool and dense with the scent of burnt myrrh. The gods stood tall, Amen with his crown of feathers, Isis holding the Ankh, Horus with the falcon's gaze, each one carved from stone that seemed to breathe under the flickering light. Once, their presence had comforted you. Now it felt like judgment. You stopped before the great statue of Ammon, his face serene, his eyes endless. Offerings of bread and lotus petals lay at his feet, dried and forgotten. You knelt, your knees pressing into the cold floor, and whispered into the stillness, "Why do you stay silent?" Your voice sounded strange, small, swallowed by the vastness of the chamber. For a moment, nothing stirred. Then the wind shifted through a crack in the roof, and the torches flickered as though in answer. You told yourself it was only air, not a sign, but something inside you refused to let go of the hope. The priests said the gods spoke through dreams, through omens, through the trembling of leaves. But what if they had grown tired of speaking? What if they too had fallen asleep beneath the weight of time? You thought of your father, who had spent his life building temples so high they touched the clouds, only for them to crumble before his grandchildren were born. You thought of the prayers written on papyrus and sealed in tombs, unread and unanswered. You pressed your forehead to the stone and closed your eyes. In the darkness behind your lids, you saw flickers of memory, the river glinting under the sun, your mother's voice singing in the courtyard. The first time you saw the throne and thought it magnificent. And then you saw fire, torches in the night, shouts, the gleam of gold melting into blood. You gasped and opened your eyes. The hall was still. The gods did not move, but the silence seemed heavier now, almost alive. Somewhere outside, a jackal cried, its mournful call echoing through the night like a question the desert had asked for centuries. You rose slowly, the weight of the vision still pressing against your chest. You walked the length of the hall, your shadow stretching long and thin against the walls. At the far end, beneath a smaller statue of Osiris, you found a cracked mirror, its surface dull with age. You looked into it and saw yourself, the pharaoh, the son of Ammon, and for a moment the reflection wavered. The eyes that looked back were not yours. They were older, darker, infinite. You blinked and they were gone. A shiver ran through you. Perhaps the gods do not whisper in words at all. Perhaps they speak through silence, through fear, through the long loneliness of power. You turned away from the mirror, leaving it to catch the torchlight and twist it into shapes your mind refused to name. Outside, the wind had risen. You stepped into the courtyard, and the night sky unfolded above you, vast, black, eternal. The stars burned like distant embers, faint but stubborn. You felt small beneath them, smaller than you had ever felt as a king. Somewhere in the far-off dunes, you thought you heard it again, that low, ancient hum of the desert, the breath of something too old to die. Maybe it was the gods, maybe only the wind, but in that moment, it didn't matter, you whispered. To the stars, the only prayer you still believed in. Let them forget me gently. The wind sighed in reply, and for the first time you thought it sounded kind. Dawn came without warmth. The horizon was a thin line of pale fire, stretching over the dunes like a wound that refused to close. You had not slept. The night had left its fingerprints beneath your eyes, and your hands trembled slightly as you washed them in a basin of cool water. Outside, the city stirred, the low murmur of vendors, the distant bleating of goats, the rhythmic chant of the morning priests, but within your chambers there was only stillness. The torches had burned themselves out, leaving thin trails of smoke that twisted in the air like dying thoughts. You dressed slowly, the weight of the royal linen pressing against your shoulders as though it too had grown heavy with memory. Today would bring another council, another ceremony, another set of promises that no one truly believed. You stepped out onto the balcony where the light was sharp and merciless. The palace below glittered faintly, its walls glinting with gold leaf that had begun to peel in thin, curling flakes. The gardens, once lush, were faded now, the pools shallow and dull. You watched the sun crawl higher, bleaching color from everything it touched, until even the river looked tired. You thought of the god's silence, of the desert's whisper, of the endless echo of your own name. Perhaps history was not written in stone or gold, but in exhaustion, in the quiet surrender that comes when men realize the world no longer listens. A servant approached, hesitant, carrying the morning tablets of news and tribute. You waved him away. You could already guess their contents. Crops failing, borders restless, the people murmuring that the pharaoh had lost the favor of heaven. They would be right, though not in the way they meant. It was not heaven that had turned away from you, but time itself. You leaned on the railing and let your eyes follow a speck of movement far below, a boy running across the courtyard, barefoot, his laughter carrying faintly on the breeze. For an instant, you saw yourself in him, a ghost of simpler days when the world had not yet asked for your soul. The boy vanished into shadow, and you turned your gaze toward the horizon, where a faint dust storm was beginning to rise. It moved slowly, almost gracefully, swallowing light as it came. You felt a strange calm settle over you. Things end. That is their nature. The crown, the temples, even the sun, all of them are only moments, pretending to be eternal. You lifted the crown from the table beside you, the metal cool and indifferent. For the first time, you noticed how the gold had darkened, the edges worn smooth by years of touch. You held it up to the light, and it gleamed weakly, like an ember struggling to remember fire. You smiled, a tired, almost tender smile, and set it back down. The wind rose, carrying with it the scent of sand and distance. You closed your eyes, and for a heartbeat, the world felt weightless. In that stillness, you imagined the desert reclaiming everything, the palace, the city, your name burying it all beneath the patient hands of time. The thought did not frighten you. It felt like mercy. When you opened your eyes again, the light had shifted, turning the chamber the color of old parchment. Somewhere far away, thunder murmured, or perhaps it was only the earth sighing. You turned from the balcony and walked back through the empty hall, your footsteps soft against the stone. Behind you, the crown gleamed one last time before the light dimmed. Outside, the dust storm drew closer, veiling the sun until the world became a muted gold. And in that half-light, that moment between day and forgetting. The Pharaoh of Nubia stood very still and thought not of gods nor of glory, but of silence, the kind that lasts forever. The Nile was never just a river. It was a god that remembered everything. Even now, when you stand on its cracked banks and watch the water slide past, you feel it watching you back, patient, eternal, almost human in its indifference. Morning mist drifts low over the surface, veiling the world in pale gray. Fishermen move like ghosts, their boats creaking softly as they cast their nets with the same weary grace as their ancestors. You step closer, your sandals sinking into the wet earth, and the smell of silt and decay rises around you. The water glimmers faintly, dull gold beneath the weak light, carrying with it the faint reflections of distant temples whose pillars lean tiredly against the sky. You kneel, reach out, and touch it. It is colder than you expect. The chill seeps into your skin, and for an instant, the ripples seem to whisper, not words, but memories. The river has seen everything. The first kings crowned on its banks, the slaves who built their tombs, the mothers who cried for sons lost to its floods. You close your eyes and listen. Beneath the hum of the wind and the distant cry of birds, you hear the slow heartbeat of the water, steady and unchanging. You remember your childhood, when the river was a place of laughter, when you believed it could never die. Back then, the floods came every year like clockwork, rich and full, painting the land with life. Now, the river seems thinner, slower, tired. The priests blame the people's sins. The farmers blame the gods. But you, standing there in the half-light, know better. It is simply old. Even the Nile grows weary of feeding empires. You look toward the east, where the sun climbs slowly, turning the mist to gold, and for a moment, the world glows like the memory of a dream. The wind shifts, carrying with it the soft rustle of papyrus reeds. You notice how their tips tremble, not from the wind, but from something deeper, as though the river itself is sighing beneath its surface. You wonder if it remembers every face that has ever looked into it, if your reflection will one day blend in to all the others. Indistinguishable, another ripple among countless forgotten souls. You stand and walk along the bank, the hem of your robe brushing against the reeds. The water catches the light in strange ways, forming shapes that seem to move with purpose. A crown, a falcon, a tear. You blink and they're gone, but the feeling lingers that the river is trying to speak. You whisper softly, asking what it wants, but your voice dissolves into the wind. Perhaps it has already told you that all things flow toward silence. Far across the water, a temple bell tolls, deep and slow, echoing across the expanse. The sound rolls through the mist, blending with the river's murmur until you cannot tell where one ends and the other begins. You feel the weight of the years settle around you like fog. The world has changed, but the Nile does not care. It remembers the rise of kings, the fall of cities, the laughter and the mourning. It has carried every secret down to the sea, where time itself forgets. You dip your hand once more into the water, and when you lift it, a single droplet clings to your skin, trembling, catching the light before falling back into the current. You watch it vanish, swallowed by the endless flow. The Nile does not keep what it remembers. It only carries it forward, forever, into the quiet mouth of oblivion. They say that beneath the Nile lies another kingdom, one of mirrors and memory, where drowned kings walk through halls of light, and the river keeps what time forgets. You used to laugh when the priests spoke of it, their voices trembling with awe as they described jeweled palaces hidden beneath the current. But now, standing here with the wind pulling softly at your robe and the water whispering secrets to the shore, you're not so certain it's only myth. You watch the sunlight scatter across the surface, flickering like 1,000 golden scales. For a heartbeat, you could almost believe you see something moving beneath. Not fish, not shadow, but a shape too large, too graceful, too still. The thought sends a chill up your spine, not of fear, but of recognition, as though something ancient inside you remembers it. You kneel at the edge and look deeper. The surface trembles, and suddenly the world above seems far away. The cries of merchants, the smell of incense, the rustle of life, all fading into silence. The reflection staring back at you does not look entirely your own. The eyes are darker, the features softened by centuries of erosion. The river is showing you someone else, or perhaps showing you yourself, stripped of name and crown and time. You blink, and the image dissolves into ripples. You tell yourself it's only the light, but doubt has already taken root. You stand again and step into the shallows, the water cool and strangely thick, wrapping around your ankles like silk. The current pulls gently, inviting, not forceful, but persuasive, like a voice calling you home. The priests once warned that the Nile takes what it loves, that it hungers for kings and poets alike. You wonder how many have stepped into its arms and never returned. Somewhere far off, a crocodile slides through the reeds, its back glinting like wet bronze. You feel the current tug again and imagine the kingdom below, not a city of stone, but of memory. Palaces built from the reflections of vanished temples, roads paved with the shimmer of long-forgotten prayers. In that world, no one wears crowns, no one commands or obeys. They simply drift, light as dust, carried by the water's endless breath. You close your eyes and listen. The sound of the river deepens, a pulse, a heartbeat, slow and steady. You think of your ancestors, their tombs sealed tight against the desert, and wonder if their spirits linger not in the sand but here, beneath the moving water, among the reeds that whisper their names each dusk. You lower yourself to your knees, the water rising to your hands, your wrists. For a moment, you feel weightless. The current swirls around you, and the world tilts above and below, no longer separate, just two halves of the same dream. You open your eyes, and for a fleeting instant, you see it, the faint glimmer of towers beneath the surface, shapes like arches and doors, faces turning upward toward the light. The moment vanishes as the wind ripples the surface again, scattering the illusion into 1,000 fragments of sun. You step back onto the shore, your robe clinging to your legs, heavy with water. The river flows on as though nothing happened, but something has changed. You look down at your hands. They shimmer faintly in the light, a thin sheen of gold dusted across your skin. You rub it away, but it does not fade. The priests say the Nile leaves its mark on those it chooses. You look once more at the water.com and endless and whisper softly, "I will remember." The river answers only with silence, but in its silence, you hear everything. The rains came late that year, hesitant, like a god unsure whether to bless or curse. For weeks, the sky had hung low and colorless, the air dry as old parchment. The farmers waited, their eyes turned upward, their prayers curling into the stillness. Then, one dawn, a rumble rose from the south, distant thunder rolling across the horizon like a drumbeat from forgotten wars. The first drops fell quietly, almost shyly, darkening the dust. You stood on the palace steps, watching the clouds gather, great black veils swallowing the light. The air thickened. The smell of wet earth rose sharp and sweet. When the rain finally broke, it came all at once, fierce and endless, pounding the roofs, the riverbanks, the courtyards. The city shuddered under its weight. Children danced in the streets. Priests lifted their arms in gratitude. The gutters overflowed like small, laughing rivers. But you, standing above it all, felt no joy. The Nile, swollen and roaring, began to rise. Its calm face vanished, replaced by a wild, hungry torrent. The water turned the color of blood and clay, dragging branches, reeds, and the ghosts of dead birds in its wake. The flood had come to feed the land, yes, but also to remind it of its fragility. You watched as the current devoured the riverbanks, as huts near the shore vanished beneath the foam. The air was alive with noise, the crash of water against stone, the shouting of men trying to save what could not be saved. You wanted to believe it was renewal, that destruction was simply the price of life. But deep inside, you sensed something older, darker. The flood was not mercy. It was memory, the river remembering what was once its own. By the third day, the city was surrounded. Boats became bridges. Prayers became cries. You waded through the temple courtyard, water lapping at your knees, the reflection of the statues rippling and bending. A priest called out that this was a sign of favor, that the gods were cleansing the world. You almost laughed. The gods did not cleanse. They collected. When night fell, the palace was lit by torchlight shimmering on the water. Every flame doubled in its reflection, the world above and the world below, blending until they were one. You stood by a column, watching the river creep higher, and for a moment you thought you saw faces beneath the surface, calm, serene, eyes open. The kingdom beneath the water, just as the old stories said. You whispered their names, your ancestors, your father, perhaps even yourself in some future yet to come. The rain slowed, became a whisper, then stopped altogether. Morning returned, pale and bruised. The flood began to retreat, leaving behind a strange silence. The city emerged from the water like a corpse rising from its grave, streets slick with mud, homes half collapsed, children scraping at the silt to find what was lost. The air smelled of rot and birth at once. You knelt and touched the ground. It was rich again, soft, dark, alive. The Nile had fed its children, but it had also taken its due. You rose, staring out at the horizon where the river still shimmered in the morning light, somewhere out there beyond sight. The flood carried the remnants of your city, pieces of wood, offerings, perhaps even names. You thought of the water whispering of the kingdom below, and realized the truth of it all. The Nile does not destroy or bless, it remembers. Every flood is an echo, every drought a silence. You closed your eyes, listening to the soft murmur of the receding current, and whispered into the wind, The river answered only with the sound of water slipping back into its endless sleep. When the floodwaters finally withdrew, they left behind a world half drowned, half reborn. The banks of the Nile were thick with silt, dark and glistening like the skin of a sleeping serpent. Everywhere you looked, reeds had begun to grow tall, thin, swaying in the light breeze that followed the storm. They moved together, whispering a sound that was neither wind nor voice, but something between, a soft, sighing chorus that filled the empty spaces the flood had left behind. The people said the gods were speaking again, their words carried in the rustle of the reeds. You listened one morning, standing by the water's edge where the mud still clung to your sandals, and thought you heard your own name among them. It was not a call, not a warning, just a quiet reminder, as if the river itself had not forgotten who you were. The air was thick with the scent of wet earth and the faint sweetness of decay. Insects hummed lazily, and small birds darted among the reeds, their wings catching the gold of early sunlight. You watched a fisherman push his narrow boat into the water, his pole dipping silently as he guided it through the shallows. Life was returning, shyly, like a guest uncertain of its welcome. Yet beneath the calm, you could feel the river's pulse, slower now, heavier, as though the flood had taken something with it. You reached down and pulled a reed from the mud, its stalk smooth and hollow. When you held it to your ear, you could hear it hum faintly, a trembling tone like breath caught in a flute. You smiled, not at the sound itself, but at what it meant. The earth was singing again. The scribes would later tell stories of how the pharaoh listened to the reeds and heard the voices of his ancestors. But the truth was simpler. You were only listening for silence, and finding that even silence, when the world is old enough, has a song. As the sun climbed higher, the light turned the river to glass. The reeds bent low, their shadows long and thin on the water's surface. You remembered your mother teaching you the names of the birds that nested there, her laughter bright as the morning breeze. You remembered the smell of the fields before harvest, the sound of oars cutting through calm water. All of it returned now, carried on the rustling song of the reeds. You walked along the bank until you came to a cluster where the wind made them tremble in rhythm, their voices rising and falling in perfect unison. You knelt, closed your eyes, and listened. For a moment, you could almost believe that everything you had lost, the crown, the youth, the faith, had only been sleeping, waiting to be sung awake. The sound filled you, soft and endless, until you could no longer tell where the river ended. A heron rose suddenly from the reeds, its wings flashing silver against the sun, and the water rippled in its wake. The reeds bent, then righted themselves, their song undisturbed. You opened your eyes and exhaled, slow and deep. Around you, the world shimmered in quiet motion, alive, tired, and eternal. You realized that this was the true gift of the Nile. Not gold or grain or glory, but this, the music of its survival. You stood, dropped the reed back into the water, and watched it float away, spinning slowly until it vanished among its brothers. The song continued, endless and patient, and you walked beside it, feeling at last what you had always sought in temples and crowns, peace that asks for nothing but stillness. At night, when the world has emptied of sound and the stars hang low over the desert, the Nile becomes a mirror that dreams. The surface smooths until even the wind seems afraid to touch it. You walk to the water's edge, careful not to break the silence, and sit where the sand is cool. The river stretches before you like a dark road leading into eternity, and you feel small beside it, smaller than you ever have before. Somewhere, an owl calls from the ruins of a temple, its cry echoing through the reeds. The air smells of old stone and moonlight. You dip your fingers into the water, and it's warmer now, slow and thick, almost alive. The current moves lazily, as if it too has grown tired of its endless journey. You whisper to it, not a prayer, not a command, just a question you have carried for years. Do you remember me? The river gives no answer, but the ripples that form around your hand glimmer faintly, like thought made visible. Perhaps it does remember. Perhaps it always has. The stars reflected in the water look like torches from another world, a city beneath. The surface where the drowned and the forgotten still walk, unburdened by time. You imagine them there, moving through golden halls of silence, their faces peaceful, their stories unspoken. You envy them a little. Life above is loud, full of hunger and dust. But below there is only calm, a kind of soft, eternal breathing. You lean closer, and for a moment your reflection becomes that of someone else, a king, a builder, a child skipping stones. The river has no single memory of you. It keeps all yourselves at once. You lie back on the sand and close your eyes. The night hums with the low song of insects and the faint rustle of reeds, a lullaby for the world's oldest soul. You can almost hear the earth shifting beneath you, slow and patient, as if it too dreams. The water laps gently at the shore, each wave a whisper that says, rest. You think of all the years the Nile has watched, the first fire lit by trembling hands, the building of kingdoms, the rise and ruin of gods. It has seen every heartbeat, every silence. It has carried the laughter of weddings and the wails of funerals alike. And now it carries your breath, joining it to the endless flow. You open your eyes once more and see the horizon dissolve into gray, the first touch of dawn. The water glows faintly, soft gold bleeding into blue. The river is waking, but slowly, like an old man reluctant to rise. You smile, tired but at peace. You realize that the Nile does not sleep as mortals do. It only pauses between memories. Even in its stillness, it remembers. You whisper your name once more, quietly, and watch as the water takes it, folding it into the current. Somewhere far away, perhaps it will surface again in another time, under another sky. You rise, brush the sand from your hands, and take one last look at the river. It seems to shimmer in recognition, or perhaps farewell. You turn and walk back toward the dark outline of the palace, your shadow fading into the light of morning. Behind you, the Nile sighs a long, slow breath, and then it sleeps again. The desert begins where memory ends. It is not a place, but a silence, a vast, golden emptiness where the wind whispers the names of kings it has long since buried. You stand at its edge, the last green reed of the Nile fading behind you, and before you stretches a world made of light and dust. The air trembles in the heat. The horizon ripples like a living thing. You take a step forward, and the sand shifts beneath your feet, soft and deep, swallowing your footprints as soon as they form. The desert does not keep what it does not want. Every grain glitters faintly, as if holding some secret light, perhaps the reflection of the sun. or the memory of the stars that once shone upon the faces of forgotten pharaohs. The wind rises suddenly, carrying with it a dry, hollow sigh that sounds almost human. You pull your cloak tighter, but the sand finds its way in, through folds, through breath, through thought. It settles on your tongue like dusted gold, and you taste the flavor of ages. The desert is patient. It eats slowly, but completely. Behind you, the Nile hums faintly in the distance, its voice dim now, like a memory being erased. Ahead, the dunes roll endlessly, pale waves frozen mid. Somewhere out there, they say, lie the bones of kings who believed they could outlast the wind. You begin to walk, guided by the faint outline of distant ruins, barely visible through the haze. The sun hangs low, red and merciless, its heat pressing against your back. Time stretches. You lose count of your steps. The world becomes rhythm, breath, crunch, silence. Your shadow grows long and thin, a black ribbon fluttering behind you. You think of the palace you left, the river that sang, the city that still sleeps beneath its own reflection. All of it feels unreal now, as though it happened to someone else. Out here, identity melts like mirage. The wind shifts again, colder this time, and you hear it whistle through unseen stones. It sounds almost like laughter, not cruel, just old, amused at your persistence. You pause, squinting against the glare, and there it is, a half-buried statue, its head tilted toward the horizon, its eyes eroded smooth. A once mighty king, now a mound of sand. You brush your hand across its surface, and grains slide away like time itself. Beneath your touch, faint carvings remain, the curve of a jaw, the ghost of a name. You whisper it aloud, but the wind swallows it whole. The desert is not cruel. It is indifferent. It takes everything, even language, and turns it into silence. You sit beside the fallen statue, the air thick with heat and light. The horizon wavers like breath. Somewhere beneath you, under layers of forgotten centuries, lie tombs that were meant to last forever. You close your eyes and listen. The sound of the sand moving is almost like the sound of water, slow, constant, inevitable. You realize that the desert and the Nile are not opposites, but reflections. One devours with silence, the other with song. You breathe in deeply, the air sharp and dry in your lungs, and exhale a long, trembling sigh. The sand shifts, as if answering. You open your eyes again, and the world seems to blur. The dunes ripple like waves. The light bends, and for an instant, you could swear you see movement beneath the surface, something vast turning in its sleep. You blink, and it's gone. Only the wind remains, whispering across the endless gold. You stand, brush the sand from your knees, and begin walking again. Behind you, the fallen statue disappears beneath the drifting grains. Ahead, the desert waits quiet, patient, and hungry. By the third day, the dunes began to take shape, no longer waves of featureless gold, but the broken outlines of walls and pillars. A city carved from memory and half swallowed by the breath of the desert. You first notice it at dawn, when the light is soft and pale, and the sand glows like powdered bronze. The air is cool for a moment, the silence perfect. Then, as the sun rises, the city awakens, not with life, but with wind. It moves through the ruins like a ghost, whistling between cracked columns and hollow archways, lifting small clouds of dust that glitter briefly before fading. You walk slowly among the remnants. Here, a courtyard buried to its knees in sand. There, a toppled obelisk, lying like a fallen soldier, its hieroglyphs eroded into whispers. You touch the stone. It's warm, almost breathing. For a heartbeat, you think you hear faint music, drums, flutes, the laughter of a festival long ended. The wind carries it, shapes it, lets it vanish again. The desert has turned sound into memory. You wander deeper into the ruins. The ground dips suddenly, revealing a staircase descending into shadow. You hesitate, then follow it. Each step a small surrender. At the bottom lies a chamber open to the sky. Its walls covered in fading images, kings and priests offering gifts to gods whose faces are gone. In the center stands a pedestal, empty. You kneel before it, brushing away a layer of dust, and see faint carvings, the symbol for breath, the sign for eternity. You realize this was once a temple to the wind itself, a god that could not be seen or touched, only felt. You smile faintly. It seems fitting. Everything the desert loves, it takes. Everything it takes, it turns to wind. You sit there for a while, letting the warm air move around you. The wind rises, circling the chamber, whispering through the cracks. It sounds almost like speech. You close your eyes and listen. It tells stories, not in words, but in sensations. The scent of rain, long gone. The echo of footsteps fading into sand. The faint pressure of time itself. You feel dizzy, lightheaded, as though your body is being hollowed out, made into an instrument through which the desert plays its endless song. You open your eyes, and the chamber seems to shimmer. The walls ripple as though made of air. The carvings shift and breathe. You see figures moving where none should be, shadows of priests with shaven heads, offering bowls of incense to the unseen. Their movements are slow, solemn, eternal. You blink, and the vision fades, leaving only dust. You rise, brushing the sand from your robes. The wind follows you up the steps, cool and persistent, tugging at your cloak like a child begging attention. When you emerge back into the sunlight, the city seems even smaller, more fragile. Columns lean like tired old men. Doorways gape like mouths that have forgotten how to speak. You realize that, soon, maybe within a generation, even these ruins will vanish. Their stones ground into grains, their stories scattered across the dunes. The desert will have its silence again. You look out across the horizon, endless, golden, empty, and think of your own name, how even that will one day be nothing more than a sound the wind forgets to repeat. You exhale slowly, letting the dry air fill your chest, and whisper, "So be it." The wind catches your words and carries them away, toward no one and nowhere, and for a moment you envy it, to wander forever without a home, without a name, without weight. The city of wind hums softly behind you as you walk away, its ruins slowly sinking back into the dunes, as if exhaling for the last time. The first bone you find is not human. It is the curved fragment of a chariot wheel, bleached white by centuries of sun, half buried where the dunes have curled against an ancient road. You kneel, brush the sand away, and the wind sighs as if displeased by your interruption. All around you, the desert is littered with the remains of ambition, a bronze spear eaten by rust, a shattered jar whose glaze still catches the light, a necklace of green stone cracked down the center. Once, this was the empire's heart, a trade route glistening with caravans, soldiers, and music. Now it is only dust and silence. You walk along what might once have been a road, though now it shifts and disappears beneath your steps. Each gust erases a little more. The sun burns overhead, flattening everything into gold. In the distance, you see shapes that could be rocks or the ribs of buildings long collapsed. As you draw closer, they reveal themselves as tombs, not royal, but common, the resting places of those who built the monuments and carried the stones. Their entrances are choked with sand, their walls cracked open like dry skin. You peer into one and find a skull resting on its side, a smile carved by time. Beside it lies a shard of pottery, scratched with the faint outline of a handprint. You wonder who it belonged to, a builder, a scribe, a mother. The desert gives no answer. You step back into the light, shielding your eyes. The wind has risen again, carrying with it the soft hiss of countless grains moving together, a sound like whispers in a forgotten tongue. You walk on. The ruins ahead are grander fragments of walls painted with ghosts of color, the faint remains of murals where gods with falcon heads and sun discs hover over kneeling figures. You trace the lines with your fingers, feeling the grit catch beneath your nails. The paint flakes away, and you feel a strange sorrow, as if you have just erased something alive. The bones of empire, you think, do not rest in graves. They scatter, they drift, they sing when the wind passes through them. You find a fragment of inscription carved deep into a fallen slab. May my name endure as long as the sun rises. The words are almost gone, but the pride still clings to them. You whisper them aloud, tasting the dryness of their hope. The sand swirls around your feet, the sky pale and endless. You realize that the desert has a strange mercy. It forgets nothing, yet remembers without affection. It keeps what it kills, not to honor it, but because it has nowhere else to put it. You walk until you reach a hill of sand, crowned by the broken remains of a gate. The lintel still bears the emblem of a king whose name has been lost to wind and time. You pass beneath it, and for a heartbeat, the world feels heavy, as if you are walking into the memory of a dream. You can almost hear footsteps beside you, soldiers marching, banners flapping, the creak of leather and gold. The sound fades as quickly as it came, leaving only your breath and the restless hiss of the sand. You stop, look back, and see your footprints already disappearing. The empire you walk through is dying again, over and over, each moment swallowed and remade. You kneel once more and scoop up a handful of sand. Mixed within it are fragments of shell, stone, bone, the dust of thousands of years, all ground together until difference means nothing. You let it fall slowly through your fingers. The wind catches it, carries it forward, spreading it thin across the horizon. You watch until the last grain is gone and whisper softly, "So ends every kingdom." The desert answers in its own language, a long, low sigh, and you feel it settle inside you like the quiet of a tomb. At sunset, you find it a hollow beneath the dunes, where the light gathers strangely, shimmering as though the air has turned to water. The sand here is smoother, finer, tinted with a faint blue sheen, and when you kneel to touch it, it feels cool against your fingers, almost like the skin of a river stone. You begin to dig without thinking, hands moving slowly, rhythmically, until the tip of your nail strikes something solid, glass. Not the brittle, perfect glass of palaces, but ancient desert glass, green, warped, born from lightning and fire. You clear away more sand, and the surface widens into a dome, translucent and faintly glowing from the sun's last breath. Beneath it lies darkness, but also color, faint glimmers of red and gold, shifting like fish beneath water. You press your ear against the surface, and you hear it, a low hum, steady as a heartbeat. For a long moment, you are afraid to breathe. Then you find the entrance, a slit in the dome where the sand has collapsed inward. You lower yourself carefully through it, your footsteps muffled by dust older than memory. Inside, the air is still and thin. The walls are not stone, but fused glass, their surfaces rippled as though frozen midway. Light seeps through them in faint blue streaks, casting reflections that move like spirits across your skin. The chamber is small, circular, almost intimate. In the center stands a single sarcophagus, carved not from rock, but from a block of dark crystal. Its lid is cracked, but unbroken. Around it, offerings have been arranged, bowls of sand turned solid, fragments of ivory, feathers of birds that no longer exist. You walk closer, each step echoing faintly in the hollow air. The hum you heard outside is louder here, resonating through your bones. You realize it is not sound but vibration, the faint tremor of the desert breathing through the glass. You rest your palm on the sarcophagus and close your eyes. The surface is warm, pulsing faintly, as though something inside it dreams. You think of the kings who believed they could outwit death with gold and prayer, who built monuments to outlast the sky. Yet here, in this glass tomb, made by accident, by a storm or a god's careless strike, there is more eternity than all their palaces combined. The glass holds everything, light, air, memory. It does not age. It only waits. You lift the lid slightly, enough to see what lies within. Not a body, at least not anymore, but a scatter of fine, silvery dust, shimmering like starlight. You stare at it, mesmerized. The hum deepens for a moment, then fades, as though the tomb has acknowledged your presence. You replace the lid gently, bow your head, and whisper a name you do not know. The chamber brightens suddenly, the light bending through the glass into 1,000 fragments. For an instant, you are surrounded by color, gold, crimson, deep blue, as if the sun itself has burst into the room. Then it fades, leaving only the faint glimmer of the sarcophagus and the quiet hiss of the wind returning through the entrance. You climb back to the surface, the sand sliding beneath your hands, and when you stand again beneath the open sky, the dome is gone. The wind has covered it as though it never existed. You turn slowly, searching, but there is nothing but dunes and dying light. The sun slips below the horizon, leaving behind a faint afterglow that looks almost like glass spread thin across the world. You whisper softly. All that remains is what the light remembers, and the wind, gentle now, carries the words away. In the distance, the first stars appear, reflected faintly in the sand like shards of the tomb itself. You realize that the desert does not bury what it takes. It transforms it, turning every story, every name, every king into the same quiet shimmer beneath an endless sky. You exhale, and the sound disappears into the breathing silence of the dunes. When dawn comes, it is not light that wakes you, but sound, the faint, endless sigh of wind moving over sand. You open your eyes to find the horizon already shimmering, the world painted in pale gold and white. The desert stretches out before you like an ocean turned to stone, its surface rippling beneath the early sun. For a moment, you lie still, listening. The wind hums through the dunes, low and steady, a language you are beginning to understand. You rise slowly, brushing the fine dust from your cloak, and see that the footprints you left yesterday are gone, swallowed by the night's restless breath. Even your own passage has been erased. You smile faintly. It seems right. Nothing here belongs to anyone, not even memory. You begin to walk, though there is nowhere left to go. The sun climbs higher, and heat begins to shimmer off the sand, bending the air into strange shapes. Distant dunes appear to float like islands. A mirage flickers, a lake, a city, perhaps even the Nile. But when you blink, it is gone. You wonder if the gods left this place because it no longer needed them, or if they are still here, invisible, their temples reduced to wind. You stop beside a small mound where a fragment of stone juts through the sand, the corner of a tablet carved with faded lines. You kneel, tracing the grooves with your fingers. They are almost too faint to read, but you recognize a pattern, the curve of a bird, the stroke of a sun, the mark of a name long forgotten. You whisper it softly, though you do not know its meaning, and the wind answers with a sigh that sounds like acknowledgement. You stay there for a long time, watching the light change. The desert shifts color with the hours, pale at morning, fierce at noon, then deep and red as fire by dusk. It breathes in light and exhales shadow. You realize that this rhythm, this slow turning between silence and glow, is the only true eternity. Empires, kings, even gods are only pauses in its breath. You close your eyes and imagine the world as it was, rivers flowing, voices chanting, the scent of lotus and smoke in the air. Then you open them, and all you see is sand, soft, endless, pure. You begin to walk again, your shadow long before you, the wind at your back. It moves the dunes in waves, reshaping them as you pass, so that when you look behind, there is nothing left. You feel light, lighter than you ever have, as if the desert has begun to claim you, to not to destroy, but to include. You stop once more and scoop a handful of sand, letting it trickle through your fingers. The grains catch the sunlight, each one a spark of something once alive, bone, stone, word, dream. You watch them fall, slow and steady, until the last slips away. The silence afterward is perfect. It presses against your ears until you can hear your own heartbeat echoing in it. You close your eyes, take one long breath, and let the desert fill your lungs. It smells of heat, of age, of endings. Somewhere far away, the wind changes direction, carrying with it the faintest trace of moisture, the scent of the river. You turn toward it, but there is nothing to see, only the same endless gold. Perhaps it is imagination, or perhaps the Nile, too, has not forgotten you. You smile, small and tired, and whisper, "I am coming home." The wind stirs, lifts a veil of sand, and in that moment, it feels as though the entire world exhales. The dunes shift softly, the horizon shimmers, and then everything stills again. The wind, the light, even thought. The desert has taken back its breath. There is no sound now, no motion, no memory, only dust and silence. At the edge of the ruined temple, where the walls lean like weary giants and the sand creeps in through every crack, sits the scribe, the last man to remember how to write the language of kings. His hands tremble, stained with ink that no longer flows easily, and the papyrus before him curls at the edges from heat. Around him, the air is thick with dust, shimmering faintly in the dying light. He has no audience now, no ruler to praise, no god to flatter. Only the weight of silence presses close, like the breath of an unseen watcher. Each evening, when the sun sinks behind the dunes and the shadows stretch like tired memories, he begins again, drawing the same shapes he has drawn 1,000 times. Lines that once meant power, symbols that once commanded life and death. Now they crumble under his touch. The reed in his hand is worn to a frayed stub, the ink little more than mud mixed with sweat. He pauses often, staring through the doorway at the horizon, where wind carries a faint haze of gold. The empire he served is gone, its palaces buried, its gods forgotten, its soldiers turned to dust. Even the river has changed course, leaving only dry reeds and ghost sounds where water once ran. Yet still he writes, because the act itself feels like breathing. The letters are smaller now, fainter, as though ashamed of their persistence. Sometimes he copies the names of old kings, their titles long and proud: Son of the Sun, Master of the Two Lands, He who lives forever. Other times, he writes no names at all, only shapes that please him, curves that remind him of wind or of the slow bend of the Nile. The walls around him are covered with his work, layer upon layer, 1,000 overlapping messages to no one. Some are carved into stone, others scratched in dust that the next breeze will erase. He does not mind. Perhaps this is the truest kind of writing, to speak knowing you will be forgotten. He remembers his teacher's voice, soft and patient, telling him that words are the only things that can outlast the body. He believed it once. Now he knows better. He glances at his own reflection in a shard of broken pottery nearby, his face a map of lines and dust, his eyes clouded but still bright with a strange calm. The light fades slowly, turning the room to amber. He feels the wind shift through the open doorway, bringing with it the smell of sand and something else, a faint sweetness, like old papyrus or crushed lotus. He smiles, thinking of the city as it was, children playing by the river, drums echoing from the temples, torches flickering against painted walls. All gone now, only the desert listens. He dips his reed again, but there is no ink left, only grit. He sets it down and sighs. With his finger, he writes one last word in the dust, a name not of a king, but his own. The letters tremble slightly, imperfect, human. He leans back, watching as a small draft curls through the door and begins to blur them. He does not stop it. The word fades, turning from mark to trace to nothing. He closes his eyes and whispers the name once more, letting it disappear into his breath. The last sound he hears before sleep is the wind moving softly through the temple, brushing over the walls like a page turning itself. Somewhere in that sound, it feels as though the world is still being written, line by line, even if no one is left to read it. When night falls over the ruins, the air grows cool, and the sand begins to whisper. It moves softly between the cracks of the old temple, tracing the carvings like a curious spirit, filling the hollows where once the feet of priests had stood. The scribe's last breath has long since vanished, but the stones remember. They hold the warmth of his touch, the rhythm of his hand, the faint imprint of the reed that shaped the last word. Somewhere deep within the wall, beneath the layers of dust and time, there is a sound so faint that even silence barely notices it. It is the murmur of the earth settling, of air shifting through narrow gaps. But if you listen closely, it almost becomes a voice. Some say the gods are dead. Others say they only sleep. Perhaps this is what their dreaming sounds like. A long, low hum beneath forgotten names. The moon climbs higher, silvering the dunes, turning the temple into a pale skeleton of stone. In that light, the carvings come alive again. The figures of kings and gods shimmer faintly, their outlines moving like shadows underwater. A bird's wing flexes, a sun disk glows for a heartbeat, a hand reaches out from the wall and then melts back into it. The air thickens with dust that glitters like ash. Every particle seems to carry memory, not of people, but of the space between them, of the pause before a word is spoken, of the stillness after it fades. The desert, it seems, is not empty at all. It is full of what remains when everything else has ended. Deep in the temple floor, under slabs too heavy for any man to lift, lie the bones of the builders, the nameless ones whose sweat turned stone into eternity. Their skulls rest side by side, facing east, toward a sun they can no longer see. The wind moves through the cracks, sighing softly over them, shaping its path like a prayer. Sometimes, on nights like this, the dunes shift just enough to let that sound escape. Travelers who pass by speak of hearing voices, not words, but tones, like breath drawn through hollow reed pipes. They say it makes the sand tremble faintly, as if something beneath it is remembering how to speak. You stand now at the edge of that same ruin, centuries later. The stars are the same, cold and unblinking. The air smells of dust and time. You step closer, running your hand along the stone, feeling the faint indentations of the old script. The letters are worn smooth, their meaning long gone, but their rhythm remains. You trace the curve of one, and the wind stirs as if in response. A single grain of sand falls from the wall and lands at your feet. You bend to pick it up. It gleams faintly in the moonlight, as though it contains light of its own. You hold it between your fingers and, without knowing why, whisper a word. It is not a prayer or a plea, just a sound, half breath, half memory. The wind answers, rising around you in a slow spiral. It passes over your face like cool water, and for a moment you feel as though the air itself recognizes you. You imagine the scribe's voice returning, the hum beneath the stone growing louder, the walls remembering what they once meant to say. But when the wind dies again, the sound is gone, replaced by stillness. You let the grain fall from your fingers and watch it disappear into the sand. The temple is silent now. Only the moon moves, tracing slow arcs over the sleeping desert. Yet, in that silence, deep beneath the stone, the faint hum continues, steady, eternal, the whisper of all that has ever been written, waiting to be spoken again. Far below the dunes, Deeper than memory, there is still a river. It does not glisten or roar like the Nile once did. It moves unseen, carving patient paths through stone and shadow. The desert above may seem eternal, but even it hides a heartbeat, water seeping through layers of earth, finding its way past salt and silence. The ancients knew of it. They called it the hidden Nile, the soul of the land that never dies. They believed it carried not water, but remembrance, every whisper, every footstep, every prayer uttered into the wind, all flowing slowly toward the underworld. You stand now on the cracked plain, where the sand hums faintly under your feet. The air is so still, you can hear your pulse. Somewhere beneath, the hidden river turns, its current thick and slow as time itself. You kneel, pressing your ear to the ground. The sand is warm, vibrating softly, like a distant drum. You close your eyes and listen. The sound deepens, expanding into something almost like music, the rhythm of centuries folding into one long sigh. You imagine it carrying fragments of lost things, the laughter of builders, the clatter of chariots, the murmur of priests reciting hymns. They drift together, their echoes tangled like reeds in water. The image is so clear, you can almost see them shadows walking through the current, their faces calm, their bodies weightless. When you open your eyes, the horizon wavers. The dunes ripple as if breathing, and the wind moves in slow waves that seem to follow the unseen river's path. You begin to walk, following the sound that only you can hear. The sun is low, a dull red coin pressing against the sky. With each step, the sand grows cooler, softer, almost damp. The air tastes faintly of salt and clay. You pause and dig your fingers into the ground. Beneath a few inches of dust, you find a thin layer of darker earth, not dry, but moist, smelling faintly of life. You stare at it, half in disbelief. Here, where no rain has fallen for 1,000 years, something still flows. You scoop a handful of it and squeeze. A single drop forms and falls back into the sand, vanishing instantly. It leaves a mark that gleams briefly, then fades. You sit back and watch the horizon. The light is changing, the last flare of sunset burning low, turning everything to bronze. For a moment, you see shapes in the distance, lines like roads, ripples like waves, even the faint reflection of water. A mirage, perhaps, but it feels different, steadier, deeper. You blink, and it remains. The wind softens, carrying the scent of wet stone. The hidden river, you realize, is not just beneath the ground. It runs beneath every name, every ruin, every word. It is the memory of what once was, still flowing long after belief has dried away. You whisper into the wind, asking where it goes. The air shifts, cool and deliberate, brushing against your face as though in answer. Maybe it carries everything toward the same end, to the place where stories dissolve, where dust becomes silence. Or maybe it never ends at all, looping beneath the desert in an eternal circle, keeping the past alive in darkness. You press your palm to the ground again, feeling the faint pulse, and think of the scribe's last word, erased by wind, but remembered by stone. The hidden river carries it now, winding endlessly below your feet, bearing all that was once spoken toward whatever waits beyond forgetting. You rise slowly, brushing the sand from your hands. The sound fades, but you know it is still there. The desert looks unchanged, endless gold, endless quiet, yet you walk with the certainty that something moves beneath it, ancient and alive, singing softly to itself in the language of water and time. When the wind rises again, it brings the past with it. The dunes shift and the surface of the desert ripples like water. For a moment, faces appear in the sand, half-formed, vanishing as soon as they are seen. They are not ghosts, exactly. They are memories pressed into the world itself, impressions of those who lived and were lost. A gust passes, and the curve of a cheek appears, the hollow of an eye, the faint suggestion of a mouth about to speak. Then the wind sighs again, and the face is gone, replaced by another and another, until the whole plain seems alive with silent expressions, rising and falling like waves. You stand among them, feeling the grains sting your skin, and wonder if they recognize you. The air hums faintly, the same tone that lives under the stones of the temple, the same whisper that once guided the scribe's hand. You realize now that nothing in this land truly dies. It only changes its form, reshaped endlessly by air and time. The builders, the soldiers, the kings, all of them have become part of the dust. Their features scattered but not lost. Each gust of wind writes and erases them in the same breath. You kneel, tracing a hollow where a face had been, and the sand shifts beneath your touch. Warmth rises from it, faint and human. For a heartbeat, the outline sharpens, a woman's eyes looking up, calm and patient, her lips moving though no sound emerges. You lean closer, straining to hear, but the wind interrupts, folding her back into the dune. The silence afterward feels enormous. You close your eyes, and images come unbidden. A market full of color and noise. A priest lifting his hands to the sun. A child running beside the river. Each scene dissolves into dust before the next appears. The desert is remembering itself through you. You open your mouth to speak, to call out to them, but there is no word for what they are. Not spirits, not echoes, not dreams. They are the residue of existence, the part that clings to the air after the body is gone. You begin to see them everywhere, in the curve of a dune, in the shimmer of heat, even in the shadows cast by clouds. The entire horizon seems made of faces now, watching, patient, unjudging. You feel neither fear nor sorrow, only a deep stillness, as if you too are being drawn into their number. The wind lifts again, swirling around you in a slow circle, and the grains strike your cheeks softly, coating your skin until it shines like bronze. You reach up and wipe your face, but the dust clings stubbornly, tracing lines that mirror those of the faces around you. You laugh quietly, a dry, rasping sound, and whisper, "So this is how we stay." The wind answers by thickening, its voice deeper now, almost like speech. It moves through the dunes with a rhythm that feels intentional, like breath. You stand still, letting it pass over you, letting it take what it wants. When it fades, the faces have vanished again, leaving only smooth sand and the quiet shimmer of heat. Yet something remains, a faint impression beneath your feet, as if the earth itself had taken note of you. You look back one last time and see nothing but endless gold stretching toward the horizon. Still, you know they are there, the countless faces folded into every grain, waiting for the next wind to bring them back. You turn away, walking slowly into the brightness, and the sand shifts gently behind you, covering your footprints, keeping the story whole. By the time the sun reaches its highest place, the ruins are nothing but shapes in the distance, their outlines trembling in the heat. You walk until even the horizon forgets where it ends, until your own shadow melts into the ground. The desert is quiet today, almost reverent, as if it knows something is about to finish. You come upon a slab of black granite, half buried in the sand, its surface rough except for one small patch where the wind has polished it smooth. You kneel, brushing away the dust with slow, deliberate strokes, and words begin to appear. Not many, only a few, carved deep enough to outlast centuries of storms. The letters are Nubian, old and simple, the kind the earliest kings used before they learned the language of their conquerors. You trace them with your fingers, feeling the coolness of the stone seep into your skin. The name is almost gone, the edges softened, the middle eaten away by time. Only the first and last symbols remain clear, like parentheses enclosing silence. You whisper them aloud, and the sound feels heavy in your mouth, older than speech itself. Around you, the air thickens. The wind stops. Even the sand seems to hold its breath. You realize that this may be the last name ever spoken from that age, the final sound, linking the living to those who built the world beneath your feet. For a long time, you do not move. The sunlight slides slowly across the stone, and in that changing light, the letters seem to glow. You imagine the scribe who carved them, the last servant of a dying court, his hands shaking as he etched his king's name one final time, knowing it would be both monument and farewell. Perhaps he worked in silence. Perhaps he wept. Perhaps he smiled at the futility of it all. Whatever he felt, it is still here, caught in the grooves of the stone, waiting to be touched. You lay your palm flat against it, and for an instant you feel warmth, like the echo of a heartbeat. Then it fades. The wind returns, gentle at first, then stronger, moving around you in wide spirals. It lifts the edges of your cloak, stirs the sand into thin curtains of gold, and begins to cover the slab again. You do not stop it. You watch as the grains settle back into the carvings, filling the letters until they disappear completely. The stone darkens, dulls, and becomes part of the desert once more. You sit beside it, listening to the soft hiss of sand flowing over stone, the sound of history erasing itself with infinite patience. Above you, the sky is an ocean of white light. A single hawk drifts high overhead, its shadow sliding briefly across the ground before vanishing. You think of the hidden river beneath your feet, of the faces in the dust, of the scribe whose last word became a whisper in stone. All of it flows together now. Names, breath, wind, silence, no longer separate, no longer human. You reach into the sand and draw a small line beside the buried slab. Not a word, only a mark. It will vanish within minutes, and that feels right. The desert, after all, keeps nothing. It only teaches the art of letting go. You stand, the wind pressing against your back, and begin to walk again. Behind you, the sand smooths itself over your footprints, over the stone, over the last name. Soon there will be nothing left but light and the endless breathing of the dunes. Somewhere beneath it all, the hidden river keeps flowing, carrying every word ever spoken toward the same horizon. You stop once, turn to look at the place where the name was, and whisper, "Be still." The wind obeys, just for a moment. Then it moves again, patient and eternal, carrying the story forward, not as memory, but as dust.